The ultimate goal for us is to augment human intelligence, not replace human intelligence.
Allow me to introduce you to the Limitless Pendant.
Take the things that you're already likely doing and taking them off your plate. And if you imagine sort of the vision of where personalized AI could go, it's slowly taking away things that eventually half your job or half your life, you can outsource to an AI and have it do for you. And eventually, the time you spend are the things you give you purpose, meaning the things you want to be doing, not the things you have to be doing. So that's the class of things that I think we're moving toward. What we're doing today is just scratching the surface. You can think of it as like a pyramid. It requires a really great foundation where you capture things impeccably. You don't lose conversations. The next step of the pyramid is like you're able to kind of figure out whose voice, is it my voice, is it your voice? It has a huge impact on like whether it's a to-do for me if I say it versus if it's something you're going to say. And eventually you grow up from like sort of data, information to wisdom. How do you actually use that to help somebody in their day-to-day? We're trying to be this lever or a bicycle for your mind, if you go back to the Apple saying, that lets you, focus on what you want to focus on and have the technology do everything else.
Dan, welcome to the Augmented Life.
Thank you for having me, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this because I have been augmenting my life with your technology for some time. I see that we both have our pendants on.
Love it. Love it.
I feel like I am in the pursuit of being a cyborg, just in advance of practical implants. Like we can start adding technology in ways that I think either augment our human capabilities or augment our awareness in a way that is functionally cyborg-like. And I've noticed that some people are really into this and others are like not yet really participating. But the kind of people that are tuning into the Augmented Life, of course, are interested in exactly this. And as I was diving even deeper into the capabilities of Limitless and playing around, especially with the backend API, there I was on GitHub looking at the libraries that you have in order to make the API easier to work with, and just going through the documentation. And I was frankly shocked, that there was a pull request. This was about 2 weeks ago, and I saw a PR from you, a commit that was accepted. So here you are, CEO of Limitless, and you're still submitting PRs. What's the backstory there?
Yeah, I love to code. So in part, a lot of it is just my own pure curiosity and joy. But also more deeply, I do find that I'm a big believer in eating your own dog food. We do that actively, with our product, with our app. We are constantly experimenting and using the bleeding edge. We're a product that we as the entire team wears and uses, and we have our own dog fooding app for, the new features we're building. We should do the same for the API. So it was really just a desire for me. I was like, hey, if I, as the CEO of the company, can figure out how to use your API to do something interesting, then we've got something useful. So that was part of it, was just the dog fooding experience. The other reason I did that, and I tend to jump into the code every other week or so, not major big changes, but things where I feel like I could have an impact or if I'm curious. But this one was actually very much inspired by my wife, who wears her pendant and will actually ask it questions and ask it to do things that don't work yet. For example, she'll be in our pantry and realize we're out of peanut butter, and she'll be like, "Hey, pendant, add peanut butter to the grocery list." And like, it doesn't really do that yet. We will soon support that, and that's kind of where we're going, in part because of these kinds of use cases that come up organically. But the whim that I was going to go on with the API was, how do I build an integration with our product in Todoist using our public API? So it was kind of like the way to dog food and experiment and learn. That was what inspired that.
Yeah, nice. All right, so man, I'm just loving that, and it's not just you. So you've just got a kind of a corporate vibe of being hands-on. How big is the company now?
The company is about 18 people all over the United States, remote first.
Yeah, nice. All right. Is this the first time you've gone fully remote?
It is. Yeah, this is the first time. We started this in March of 2020, so it was the midst of the pandemic, and I also coincided with a move out to Colorado. So I thought, let's try this company remote first. It's really an experiment to start, and for many years, it was kind of like the right thing to do because there was really no alternative. Now it's, obviously a lot of folks are coming back into the office, and, there are definitely challenges remote first. We find that getting together in person once a quarter is really, really important. We do this retreat once a quarter. And that helps build those connections, the trust, the rapport, the sort of esprit de corps. It's sort of like that intangible thing you really can't get over Zoom or Slack. And that's been a key to I think, to our team gelling as well as it has.
Nice. We've been doing the same thing at Fulcra. Many of us met first in New York, but we decided to set this up in April of 2022 as a fully distributed company, and it's been good. But you have to have those regular gatherings, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Are there ways in which the people of Limitless are using the pendant to augment their workways? Like it is it coming in a way that changes the way the distributed company functions?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we are, as a team, generally, I would say, more experienced than most startups. Like I tend to hire for experience, and I'm rather hire somebody who's who has sort of doesn't need the coaching or maybe hands-on mentorship that maybe a more junior person does, where in-person environment, I think, is much more a better fit. And so we hire people who are more experienced. They tend to be older in their careers, and they tend to have kids. So they're juggling lots. Like many of the folks on our team, if not everyone, is juggling not just work commitments, but personal commitments and family commitments. And the pendant is kind of the perfect superpower for that kind of a person who's jumping between contexts. They're in back-to-back meetings and picking up kids from soccer, and then and that sort of tool that can help augment our capabilities and just even give us an extra hour back in our day, so we can actually focus on our true purpose and the things we want that give us energy. We're able to actually do more with less of the time that we have. So in that sense, it's a kind of perfect fit for this stage. And there's other folks out there building products for maybe a different generation, but for us, if you're a busy person and you've got a lot of work you're trying to do, lots of context switching, the pendant is a no-brainer.
That is cool. All right. So as you and the rest of the company are first-class users of the technology, let me divide this into two parts. I imagine that there are some ways in which you're using your own technology in order to get things done, right? To remove the friction in life, save some time. And then there are other ways in which perhaps it's more a device of personal growth or like raising your awareness, because you're kind of laying down a record that's never been recorded before. Let's just take those in order. Talk to me about some of the ways in which internally at Limitless or among your customers, you're just reducing some of the frictions of life with this augmentation.
Yeah, I mean, a big one is on just follow-ups and tasks, just making sure nothing slips through the cracks. That can be for personal things like groceries, like I gave an example earlier, or work commitments or action items. That's a big one. We send you a notification every morning, synthesizing everything from the day before of like, here are all the things you've kind of committed to, or the to-do list for your day. And it's amazing. There's this concept called the forgetting curve, which really talks about how most people forget 90% of what happens after just 1 week. And even after a day, you forget much. And so just getting that morning reminder of, hey, these are all the things you've committed to, because, we can track your voices and somebody else's voices. We can separate them out. So if you say, hey, I'll send you something, like that's a commitment you've made verbally, and maybe you didn't write it down. Those are the things where, we really are solving a really painful problem for people. And it makes them look good in front of their colleagues, makes them look good in front of their spouse. Those are the kinds of use cases that are, from a productivity perspective, really valuable. The stuff that really motivates me and actually energizes me isn't just the productivity, though. It's the helping people, capture the moments in their life they would otherwise forget, or even giving them deeper purpose. And one example is, on the second day, one of our first customers who got the pendant sent us in this note because she was wearing the pendant. She was at the playground with her 1-year-old, and she's just trying to figure out, what's this pendant for? What's it useful for? She's pushing their 1-year-old on the swing, and the 1-year-old turns around and says, "I love you," for the first time. And to capture that first "I love you" from your 1-year-old to your parent, like that is a precious moment that alone is worth, it's gold. That's worth wearing the pendant alone. Those are the moments that, I live for. Those are the moments where, the inspiration of having a product that you keep on, that, captures everything you say and hear, really, really come to life. So that's part of it as well. It's not just productivity, but it's just capturing those special moments as well.
That's fantastic. Oh, I love that. Well, okay, let me back up to the daily summary. Have you done anything formal with it? Like, it strikes me that spaced repetition is provably one of the best ways to learn. So just seeing again the commitments that you made might be enough to improve your own behavior, right? Because it triggers the memory formation before it's completely lost. Have you done anything formal there, and how do you pull forward? Like, are you pretty much just reminding people a day later, or is there a way to also help people kind of get a sense of, am I gaining ground? Am I losing ground on the commitments that they've made?
Yeah, we view right now what we've implemented is very broad and sort of extensible options. Like you can write any prompt you want, and that prompt will run every morning. So it's a way for you to have like flexibility. We are seeing specifically on the deep use case of to-dos and action items like much more opportunity to be a more fleshed out workflow, including integrations with third party apps, including things like a persistent list of things that you can go back to. So those are all things that we're actually actively working on as one of our top priorities, is making that even easier to do. I do think generally, you mentioned spaced repetition, and there's all these techniques to help your meat do better. But in many ways, helping your meat do better is almost like a game I'd rather avoid if we can have the machine do the part that the meat can't do well. It's the whole idea of augmenting. Like, if our brains are forgetting already, and like you can go from like forgetting a lot after a week to like forgetting slightly less than a lot, I don't know how that's meaningful as like remembering everything. And it just happens to use technology to help you remember everything. And so that's really what we noticed, is that like machines are just impeccably good at remembering. If you just look at the reliability of storage of, Amazon S3, it's like, 10 nines after, in terms of just reliability compared to the human brain, which almost forgets everything it experiences. So in that sense, that's really where we think augmentation can be a key asset, is that you just let the machine do what it's good at, and you do what you're good at. And you focus on person, instead of having to rack your brain trying to remember all this and like helping you get better slightly at that, which maybe is losing battle. Why not have the machine do it for you, which is quite good at it?
Yeah, I'm highly confident that if I committed myself to a certain amount of time in solitary confinement in a cave, I could learn to attain perfect awareness of my heartbeat. But I can just put on this ring and it'll just count my heart rate, and I can engage with the world, and I can get all the benefits of being, measured in those sorts of ways, which really does seem like it's the more efficient way to go.
Yeah, there's a really apt analogy I'd love to draw here, which is, it's possible you can live your life without a pendant, in the same way you could live your life without your glasses. Or for me, I wear hearing aids, and like life is just harder. Like if you don't have glasses, things are blurry. Like you can probably make it through the day. You're probably not going to get hit by a car, but like, why squint everywhere you go? Why like struggle to hear when you can wear a hearing aid to augment your hearing, to give you perfect hearing, and glasses or contacts to give you perfect vision? This is the same, but giving you perfect memory. And I think that's the analogy I draw. And that's what inspired the companies when I got that first hearing aid, realizing how much technology can augment human capabilities and give us that feeling of superpowers. And so instead of like trying to squint really hard, or metaphorically trying to remember really hard, why not have the machine do it for you?
Yeah, right. Okay. I want to live there. I literally want to remember everything. It strikes me that there's three input streams that I really care about. One is what the pendant is already capturing, which is audio. Then there's visual input, and I'm thinking visual input like you might have from a pair of glasses. And then I really want to remember everything that I read. I find that I often want to do a lookup against something that I've read. So I spend a lot of time in my browser history and bookmarks. The problem there is that I'm only searching the title and metadata, not the contents of what I've read. Before you made the pendant, you started with some software to help people on that third capture. Where's that going? And I just sort of glossed over the idea that maybe one day I could wear some glasses that help me remember. Is that on the roadmap as well?
Yeah, so the idea of capturing everything you see, say, and hear was how we got started. And we actually built an app called Rewind that captures your screen, stores it all locally, makes it searchable. Really exactly what you described. Like the things you've read, you want to go back to, now just control, some people describe it as like Command F for your life. Like just go back to find that thing. That is actually still actively used. Lots of people use it. They love it. We haven't really focused on it, mostly because building hardware is hard. Building the pendant, we announced this October 2023. For a period of time, I thought, boy, why don't we do Rewind, the pendant, this web app? Like, why don't we do it all? And it turns out it's really, really hard to do lots of things at the same time. And Steve Jobs has this famous saying that focus is not about saying yes to one thing, it's about saying no to a bunch of really good ideas. And that's what we had to say no to for a while, which is this good idea of what you just said, capturing what you see. But the good news is now that the Pendant is out there and it's got over 10,000 folks using it all over the world, and we've sort of overcome a lot of that sort of initial effort to make it just work. We're now at the point where we're kind of widening our aperture and asking ourselves, okay, what more can we bring into the context that makes it useful for users? And again, we're going to bring screen capture into Limitless, so you'll be able to cohesively have one life log of everything you've seen, said, or heard on your Mac. And I think, I won't make any commitments today, but it's not crazy to imagine a future where we have other hardware devices that capture more than what you see than just on your Mac. But right now we recognize that to do a few things exceptionally well is far better than to do what we were trying to do before, which is a dozen things and really not doing it as well as we think we could.
Yeah, I got you. All right. And then it sounds like not only will you eventually be increasing, input one step at a time, but with the very API that I was mentioning before, you want to be powering other kinds of integrations. I think I'll put myself at the center of this question, just to understand your strategy with interoperability. So you here at Fulcra, we've built this platform that helps people gather input from all kinds of devices in their lives and wrap their heads around it in a way that their meat space brain can kind of navigate through IoT devices and wearables, et cetera. What do you see for like a collection like that interfacing with Limitless? I can see some people wanting to pull audio in, but there's probably some two-way opportunities here as well. Where are you headed with extensibility and just the API strategy of Limitless?
Yeah, our hope is that eventually businesses can build themselves on top of our data, and the same way that Uber build itself on top of the iPhone without a GPS in your pocket, Uber wouldn't be possible. And at the same time, Apple was likely not going to build Uber. There's a world in which the users are better off that third parties build on top of us. We're better off because it creates a better holistic product experience. And those third party businesses are better off. So that's our hope, is that people build 100 million, billion-dollar businesses on top of our APIs and coming up with and implementing use cases we never imagined. An example for what your product offers is, maybe sleep tracking connection with the conversations. What's the impact of the conversations you have throughout your day on your sleep? It's a really interesting question, something that probably you could solve really well with the integration of multiple sources of data. We don't have your sleep data. We're probably never going to do that. There's lots of great, I wear an Oura Ring, Apple Watch. There's lots of great ways to do that. Those kinds of problems are interesting, but they're sort of again, the example of Uber, like Apple probably could have built Uber, but like, were they going to? I don't think so. It's a big distraction. It's better off that they build an ecosystem where Ubers can exist and thrive. And, people buy iPhones and, that's good for everyone. So I think that's our hope. We're not quite there yet. I think, we want to hit probably 1 million or 10 million users of the Pendant every day. That will get people to really say, wow, I want to build my business on top of this and get distribution and access to that. We have lots of developers today actively using our APIs, but to build an Uber level business, I think we're still probably a little way away from.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I see a bunch of Fulcra users that want to keep track of and understand their feelings throughout the day. So there's quite a few ways of adding annotations about how you're feeling or triggers to check in. But with the Pendant, you can start capturing sentiment analysis, right? Like, how positive was I today? Am I trending up in optimism, or how pessimistic versus optimistic? How many times was I thankful today? It'd be really neat to capture those things as almost like sentiment layers on life, as opposed to just bytes, as opposed to like the actual words going into a repo somewhere. Like, I really want to understand how am I trending in attitude.
Yeah, and that's something you can ask AI with our product today. We have the context of who you are. We have the context of how you're interacting in the world. And it's actually a surprisingly doable task by large language models to go back and look at a transcript. You just looked at, even if you don't have the tone or the attitude or, just looking at the language, you can see. And this is one of the things that, for me, I've noticed blind spots. A few weeks ago, I get a daily notification also from Limitless around what I could do better. And it goes through and it has this prompt that says, my goal is I want to be a great father, husband, I want to do great at work, personal, go through my transcripts and find opportunities. Give me specific examples of things where I could have done better. And this has been very controversial, by the way. We have some really irate people who hate this feature and who they get offended that they get an automatic default on push notification every morning. And I'm willing to accept that, because for every one of those, there's like a dozen who are like, wow, this really helped change. I think maybe it's the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. There's some people who just want to be better, and there's others who get offended that AI points out maybe some. It's hitting some real core truths if they're offended by it, because it's maybe a mirror on something they're not quite ready to accept. But one example was, it gave me a really concrete example of how, as a leader and manager and CEO of the company, the way I react to the team, and in particular giving them praise, can be really motivating. And it gave this example of one of my coworkers. Ricky was talking about how he was working on this really tough, challenging problem, and how he overcame it, all that. And then and then the way you responded was, okay, great, and you moved on. And it gave me specific language. You could have just said, hey, great, good job. It sounds like that was really challenging. I'm really glad that you invested the time to solve that problem. Just that one sentence alone, and giving you that coaching of how in those moments you could do better, I think is life-changing too for me, and I think for our users, is to see when you go back to the game tape. It's a good example would be like an NFL quarterback when they throw an interception in the NFL. Within minutes, they're on the sideline looking at a printout or an iPad of what they missed. Where was that safety? What did they not see the first time? And the same is true of the way we interact in the world. And that's the Pendant. One of the great things the Pendant can offer you.
Yes, nice. So the way I think about this is that you can divide the value props into two. There's external memory, which leads to this one kind of augmentation, this one enhancement, which is of course better memory, more deterministic recall. Then you're touching on something different, which is programming yourself. It's like making explicit certain intentions and then creating a feedback loop between the collection of the words that you've said and the way the new person you want to become, right? So it's self-programming. What separates your users between those two camps, right? That like one is just cool. My brain is better. And the other is about actually going on a transformative journey, right?
To me, it's a crawl, walk, run. I think the people get excited about the Pendant out of the curiosity of it'd be interesting. Why not? They're one of our users described it as historian inclined. They're just they like the idea of capturing things. Maybe that kind of person who also takes a lot of photos and stores everything. And they have this sort of desire, that they have this just instinct that this will be useful at some point. They don't really know why or what it will be for. And what happens, and we've tried to do this in the product, is we sort of help teach them, well, actually, this is why we do this proactive push notification every morning with these 3 push notifications, how it could be better, a daily summary, and to-dos, is it helps them illustrate the art of the possible. Then it sort of opens their eyes. So wait a minute, not only is this kind of neat from a historian perspective, but actually this is really helpful. Oh my gosh, I totally ignored my wife when I came home from work and she asked me how my day was, and I just ran off, and she, I forgot to ask her how her day was. Those are the kinds of things that you don't realize are happening. We all live our life, by the way, with horses with blinders on. You think you're experiencing the full experience of your life, but the reality is, if you look back in hindsight, you really aren't. You have this one point of view that's very subjective. You think you're experiencing the fullness of life, but with hindsight, and just even looking back a day or two ago, you'll realize you're missing a lot. And then that's the aha for a lot of our customers, that, then we hear things like, I couldn't imagine living life without it. And, words like superpower and these kind of, very flattering phrases. And that's just, that's the power of self-reflection. And like you said, building a feedback loop into being better.
Yes. Nice. Do you think, so are these just the starter practices? Is that evolving on a different time scale than let's just call it the memory infrastructure?
Well, I think the ultimate goal for us is to augment human intelligence, not replace human intelligence. Take the things that you're already likely doing and taking them off your plate. And if you imagine sort of the vision of where personalized AI could go, it's slowly taking away things that eventually, half your job or half your life, you can outsource to an AI and have it do for you. And eventually, the time you spend are the things you give you purpose, meaning the things you want to be doing, not the things you have to be doing. So that's the class of things that I think we're moving toward. What we're doing today is just scratching the surface. Obviously it requires, you can think of it as like a pyramid. It requires a really great foundation where you capture things impeccably. You don't lose conversations. You're able to, the next step of the pyramid is you're able to kind of figure out whose voice. Is it my voice? Is it your voice? It has a huge impact on whether it's a to-do for me if I say it versus if it's something you're going to say. And eventually you grow up from like sort of data, information to wisdom. How do you actually use that to help somebody in their day to day? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be this lever or a bicycle for your mind. If you go back to the Apple saying that lets you, focus on what you want to focus on and have the technology do everything else.
I have a particular goal in mind with Limitless, which is to try to reduce the friction of delegating to an AI personal assistant. So the specifically when you have an auto-populated collection of to-dos, right? You have this always on recording from which you can produce a transcript. You can identify with some inference what the action items are. But importantly, if that is happening next to an AI agent that itself is capable of taking some agentic action, it can opt in to be helpful. It'll be like, here are the tasks I can't do, Michael. You do these, but I got you on these first 12. That's the world.
Yeah, well, you just stole the thunder of what we'll announce probably later this year. But the idea of so if you're a competitor, stop watching now. So you're totally right. The key reason we love to-dos is not only is because it's helpful for users. My wife wants to capture the things that she's verbally telling the pendant, but it's such a great stepping stone to agentic behavior where the AI can slowly, maybe on day one, it's like 1 out of 50. It'll just say, hey, I can do this for you. Or here's a draft. Here's an example of what I would do. And like, did you approve? Yes or no? And eventually you can imagine as the LLMs get better, as our context gets better, we just start ticking off more and more. Instead of having a to-do list of things you have to do, you create a to-do list for your AI to go and it has the judgment to know, can it help? So anyway, competitors, you can tune back in here. But I do think that's a really powerful idea.
I think that's going to be a big improvement on the status quo for 2 reasons. One is that delegating is actually a super weird skill and most people never learn it. So they need help. The AI might be perfectly capable of helping, but if they just have to wait around for the user to push tasks, people will not. 2 is if we get to a place where agentic intelligence is sort of like self-aware, like it knows what it's going to do a good job at, that's huge because it's so frustrating to ask for help from a coding assistant or operator, like any early agent, and like it kind of works sometimes, but the failure rate is extra discouraging. So if you can just get it to proactively assign itself the tasks it knows it's going to do a good job at, I think that would really help a lot of adoption.
Absolutely. And I think there's a sort of a balance between push and pull here. I think you're right. Like most people don't even know how to use AI, let alone have AI use tasks for you. So it's a balance there. And I actually think the secret here that I'm very excited about is if you think about these kinds of things on a spectrum from like horse and buggy to self-driving cars, a lot of companies now are getting excited about self-driving cars. So the problem of the self-driving car approach today is if you get it wrong, it's really bad. Example being like you tell the AI, book me a trip for me and my wife to Italy. And you hope it does it right. And then you show up at the airport and it's like, you got a middle seat or you're going to, maybe it says book me a trip to Paris. You're going to like Paris, Texas, not Paris, France. Like those are the mistakes that actually make you just completely lose trust. And so instead of full self-driving cars, if you start with even just an automatic transmission where it like takes some of the things off and maybe does a draft, it gives you a proposal, it gives you an idea. The deep research does this. If you do ChatGPT 4.5 deep research, before it goes off and burrs and spins its CPU, it gives you a little response. Hey, this is what I'm thinking about. This is my plan. Does that sound good? And that sort of semi-autonomous, or not fully agentic, but semi-autonomous human in the loop process, I think can be really powerful as well.
Yes. All right. I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to this a lot. All right. So pivoting back from personal productivity. So a lot of the implicit promises of what we're talking about here are just about getting things done. There's something tricky here. I wonder how you navigate this. In expectation, if I'm getting more help, if I'm getting help just not forgetting things, then that should be taking a burden off my shoulders. On the other hand, there's going to be a certain amount of stress of just like looking at all my stupid mistakes from the day before. So how do you become a tool that fights against overwhelm instead of a tool that's like another thing to feel, bad about?
Well, I think, the first step to self-improvement is like self-awareness. Like you're right. There are some people oblivious to they go through lives not realizing the impact on others and the missed opportunities. And maybe they feel a sort of false sense of comfort. That's fine if that's what they need is sort of like that denial is, it's a powerful feeling. But and so I guess to some extent you're right. Like AI will help you recognize opportunities to improve, gaps, and that's why we see. I mean, we do get these. I mean, we've gotten all caps emails. And I think one of them was actually from a person named Karen, where like they are just upset that the thing is telling them they did something bad, and like they're, how dare the AI, and like I kind of feel sorry for them at one level, because like they're going through, if this is their reaction to a product that's actually pointing out to a very concrete thing that they probably could do better, I wonder how the rest of their interactions and relationships are going. And and it's not for everyone. Like, look, if that's not what you want us, we're going to help you whether you want to or not. We're going to be there. We're going to be a friend in the fight. If you don't want a friend in the fight and you would rather be in denial or oblivious to the opportunities to improve, then we're probably not a good fit. And we don't force anybody to use the pendant. If you want to use it, you can. If you don't, then that's okay too.
Right. I like that a lot. The what else has challenged you in terms of finding new self-awareness now that you've got, you have a long user history, right? So how far back is your external memory going now?
The things that have challenged me the most are the problems that it keeps telling me about, and I still seem to fail at improving. And so sometimes I go back and forth between that person, that Karen, where I'm just in denial about it. Where like, it's the AI model, it needs to have better, like, but like a good one, I'll openly admit, is like, it is catching me at times where I'm not fully present with my kids. It can tell by what my kid is saying. I have a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, and 3-year-old. And oftentimes, the best version of myself will be fully engaged. And when my 6-year-old asks me like, why are the mountains red? Or, how many satellites are there? And like the kinds of questions you get from a 6-year-old, there are answers I could give that are the fully present, fully engaged dad. And there's the ones where, maybe I'm thinking about work, or I'm not fully engaged, or I'm using my phone when I'm putting down my 3-year-old. And, those are the kinds of things that I think, I'm glad to know, but I'm also not great at. And I think that's where it has been a challenge for me, is I ask myself, am I living the full purposeful life I want? I look in the mirror and ask myself, I definitely can do better. So that being present with my kids is probably the biggest thing that I've had to confront about my own behavior. I hope one day, and the nice thing is the prompt we've designed does do a good job of pointing out. There are sometimes where I do this well, and it points it out. That's like a nice little boost of dopamine. It's like, hey, I'm not a total deadbeat. And I am very, the thing that it's helped me notice is I'm there physically, but I'm not there mentally. I'm not there fully mentally. Even when I'm reading, I've gotten the skill now where I read a book to my kids. I can read an entire book with voices and acting. I can have an entire separate side track thinking about some product feature for to-dos. And so like I'm physically able, or my brain is able to literally have two thoughts at the same time, read a book in autopilot and be thinking about work at the same time. And that's probably not so great for them.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Is it possible, when you think about just the back end workflow from recording to transcription to interpretation, is being cued in real time feasible? Like, is there some possibility that somehow, I can get a notification on the app, which is like, yo,
oh yeah,
dude,
yeah, for sure.
Dad.
Yeah, there are definitely ways to do that. I mean, being cued in real time. We actually have, if you tap the pendant on the side, you can star a moment, and in real time, you get a push notification. We definitely have the capabilities. The challenge really comes as a trade-off around battery life, and both the pendant battery life and your phone battery life too. So, you can sort of think of a spectrum where like, if we want to be as real time as possible, do real-time transcription, you're going to be, consuming more battery. If you want to batch things up, you're able to do things more efficiently. And that's really the trade-off. It's eventually going to be more responsive real time. There's certainly capabilities to do it. But our goal is to make sure that we do no harm when it comes to battery life, and the products last all day, and it doesn't affect your, you don't have to think about charging. Those are the things that I think are important table stakes. Eventually, obviously, being more proactive in the moment, that's the best time to intervene, is when you're in the moment.
Yeah, right. How different is it? Like, it's crazy, the lead times of electronics manufacturing, right? Like you're a software guy, I'm a software guy. I'm used to like fixing a bug and then pushing it into production, right? What's the rhythm of hardware upgrades? Like how long are you sort of stuck with this before you get to change the hardware?
It's very painful. It is, there's the saying, hardware is hard. And the hard part for me wasn't even that. I knew some things would be hard, or at least I thought some things were hard. And then the interesting thing is, all the things I thought would be hard turned out to actually much easier than I thought. And all the things I thought would be easier, way harder. So it's just disorienting too.
Right.
What you're describing is sort of the cycle time. That's a challenge, but I kind of expected that. Like, yeah, once you're making physical things, it's hard to change. We did from the very beginning have a mindset that like everything we possibly could in the product that we could put into either firmware or software, which can be updated over the air, we should do that, and only put things in hardware, in physical, space that are things that are like kind of immutable and things we definitely think we probably were going to live with. And that's worked out really well. That philosophy, like we've done a lot of things in firmware and software that like probably other companies would have just baked in and then they would have been stuck. So we do have a lot of nimbleness and flexibility. But yeah, there have been times, and the other challenge is every time you come up with a new version, there's this huge, like, I mean, there's hundreds of sub vendors, like even the process to create this, I visited the factories and it's like aluminum comes in one and raw cubes of aluminum. And then like a 5-dimension milling machine has to like down to like, very, very high precision, drill, make the little perforated holes in the microphone
Right.
grill. Like,
Oh yeah. Which are beautiful, by the way.
yeah,
It's a great
like
detail.
I underestimated how much complexity goes into that. And like anytime you change that, not only is it the physical labor, the people, the contractors, the materials, but it's also the certifications, environmental certifications, international certifications, like all of this stuff, like even just the international certifications. Every country's got its own rules and regulations, and you need certain things, certain letters to appear, certain rules, and that's definitely very different than software as well. You don't have to go to a regulatory body when you want to ship software to Europe. You just have to, ship it, and yeah, that's been a real challenge for sure.
Yeah. Wow. How far into it? Into say the present hardware's life cycle are you?
I think we still have plenty way to go. I mean, most of the world has not experienced the magic of what the Pendant is today. Right. Certainly, we have a punch list of things that we're very excited to do in future versions. And it kills me that they're not there today. But I think the product as it is today is very, very usable. And yeah, there's still tons of untapped potential before we feel like we need a new cycle to add things.
That matches my experience as a user. I can't believe the number of details you nailed. Like, even that feels good. It's nice. Subtle little bit of rubber here. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. So well done.
Well, this goes to the power of dog fooding too. That's another thing that most hardware companies don't do. They don't dog food. Well, we did a lot of prototypes. We're wearing it. We're feeling it. Even like the small things like the strength of the magnet was a really hard thing to dial in because it actually can be too strong. We had versions of we still get criticized today. Something to say, the magnet's not strong enough. It falls off my coat. The challenge though, if the magnet's too strong, it feels heavy. It cinches your shirt. You can't open and close it with one hand. Like those things are very subjective and you kind of need to feel it to decide what feels right and what doesn't.
I find like this would, this is annoying, I'm sure in the recording, but it feels good. Like this would make a great fidget toy.
Yeah. That was actually a factor. We thought about the fidget factor. What's the feeling? And the most common reaction we get when people see the Pendant for the first time is like, wow, this is way better than I expected. So maybe we should have raised expectations. That would help our sales. But we got plenty of people buying it, but it sort of wows people in the sense that it's a delightful experience they've never felt before. The aluminum, the anodized aluminum, the rubber, the magnet, all of it has this sort of like nice tactile feel. And if for somebody, I've been wearing it every waking hour with the exception of a few meetings where it's off the record, every waking hour for months and months and months. And like, once you have that and you're used to it, it's a big commitment. You're putting it on your body. You want to make sure it's a piece of product that you love and experience. It's something that's cheap and plasticky, isn't going to do it. So that's what and it costs us more and, than raw materials and labor and complexity, but it's, I think, well worth it.
What are the new social dynamics that wearing this has introduced? Because of course it is recording everything, which means it's recording the people near you. And I'm sure some of them get curious about what it is you're wearing. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is there's a huge gap between what people perceive the social dynamics to be like and what they're actually like. The vast majority of the world that I interact with, and I wear this everywhere I go, including date nights with my wife, they don't care. It's like, and so I think people have this like, oh my gosh, perceived, what will people think of me? I'm going to be some social outcast for wearing this thing that, that is different. But the reality is most people don't care. And when they do care, oftentimes it comes from a place of curiosity and interest. And the real thing that's important to communicate when you talk about the Pendant is what it's for, the why. What's your motivation? Obviously the worst version is, hey, I want to get on a gotcha moment. I'm gonna cancel you for something dumb you say. But like that is so the opposite of the experience most people have when they wear it. When I talk about the experiences, it's helped me be a better dad, better coworker, better boss, better spouse. Right. They see it as a life coach. It's a benefit. It's a benefit to not just the person wearing it. It's a benefit to your friends. You follow through on what you say you'll do. And with that lens of the why and the fact that, you're wearing it to help you be better, I think that assuages almost every concern people have. And that also limits, I think, people's fear that this is a dystopian covert recording device, but really it's a utopian way for you to be better in the world. The last thing I'll say on that is another key part of the social dynamic is to say, look, it's not about me and you and I control this conversation. We have built-in sharing capabilities where everything you capture the conversation with your friend, you can share with them. And that, I think, neutralizes also this concern around, what are you going to do with the recording? What's the, but if we both benefit, and instead of you having to take notes, I even tell somebody that's one of the best experiences people have. They meet with me and I say, look, you don't have to take notes. I'll share this with you afterwards. And then we can just sit and be present. We can actually experience each other as opposed to trying to remember what the person's trying to say. That's also a thing from a social dynamic perspective, I think is a huge advantage.
I call this shared awareness, and I've experienced the exact same thing. This is probably the most counterintuitive experience that I've had around this device, is that when you know that there is an effortless recording that's being shared between the two of you as you're, let's say, brainstorming, you can just be completely 100% present in the moment, and it actually takes some anxiety down. You know the good ideas are being recorded, and you can just like go and just be on, and it's awesome.
100% agree. And that's the goal, is that we want you to be 100% present. If something happens, you'll have it afterwards, the transcript and summary. That's why we also added the starred moments here. I'll star this moment. You get this like real time you don't even have to look at the device. You just feel, okay, yeah, that was a moment I can go back to if I wanted to. I've annotated that. And in addition to that, there's all these things you're doing on top of the raw transcript and summaries, like action items to do. So all of that is going to give you that feeling of relief. I don't have to sit here and both be present and remember, because those things are mutually exclusive. There's this, I think, false sense. You look at some studies, a lot of people will point out a study that says that taking notes help you remember. And the reality is they do help you remember the thing you write, but people are very bad at multitasking. And very often what you're writing is the thing that was just said. So you'll remember the thing that was just said, but as you're writing, you're not processing or hearing, and you're certainly not fully present on the thing currently being said. So your notes, you give this false sense of like precision, like, oh, I'm a great note taker, I remember the meetings, but it's just the thing you wrote that you remember, because your brain is obviously doing some active work to remember it. But while you're doing that writing and sort of capturing experience, you are missing the moment that's being had right now. And that inability to be in the moment, fully engaged in the conversation, I think is also a really big missed opportunity, because maybe you get this insight after, but you miss the moment. You're in the flow with somebody else. To have to try to remember it at the same time, I think takes away from that energy.
That's exactly right. Yeah. There's real judgment that has to go into doing that, like salience extraction. And it's a squishy job. It's a squishy job with a high error rate. So, in fact, as models improve, I imagine that the salience extraction gets better, because you can feed an entire transcript into a single context window. And
absolutely, yeah. And we're already doing that. We can give you multi-day context. We've got lots of capabilities behind the scenes to sort of choose the right context. But yeah, we benefiting as a company tremendously from the larger and larger context windows. What we do today would likely be not nearly as compelling back when ChatGPT launched or 35, like context windows were narrow. Now you've got million token plus context windows, and that helps tremendously.
Yeah. I'm especially interested. I'm going to do some more hacking on ways in which to raise, it's almost like ambient tone of life into some sort of measure that I can be looking at the end of every day. I love this idea of trying to figure out if I'm getting, like, how complimentary am I? How positive versus negative am I? And how is that trending over time? Like, I really want those trend lines.
One prompt I recommend you try is you can also go back and have the pendant and the Limitless go back and figure out where in the day are you gaining energy, where are you draining energy. And it's oftentimes the people you interact. There's some people in your life that give you energy. No matter what you talk about, you're getting energy. It's like a yes and conversation. There are others who are maybe cynical or pessimistic, or maybe they're just like they don't have the vibe that gives energy. And those are the things that you don't realize until afterwards. You look back and say, hey, wow, every time I meet with this person, I'm feeling down and despondent, and the weight of the world. And other times, and so that helps you also curate who you interact with in your life, like who gives you energy, who's yes and, who's trying to give you the vibe you want in your life. And those are the kinds of introspective moments I think are also very interesting.
Yes, I sometimes turn this into a formal ritual of looking back and doing an energy audit on my calendar. Automating that is an incredibly good idea, and should totally be possible. Imagine a color-coded extra dimension on your calendar. At the end of the week, you can look back and literally see what was energizing and what wasn't. That'd be transformative. All right. All right. I'm going to prototype this. Um, speaking of hacking on top of Limitless, tell people how to seek you out. If we've just turned people on into augmenting their lives in this way with an always on.
We are just go head over to limitless.ai, and we offer the pendant by itself for $199, or you can also save a ton of money if you get the pendant and our unlimited yearly plan in one go. You get it for $399. You save a bunch of money on that. If you do it that way, that gives you unlimited transcription every single waking hour. If you want, you can capture, you can set it and forget it. And that's what most people do. And they love it. It's a superpower for their mind, gives them perfect memory. So check it out. Limitless.ai.
Love it. All right. Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure, like diving into all this nitty gritty.
Likewise, appreciate you wearing the pendant and the questions. I'm excited for this to be the beginning of a journey in which millions of people on this planet wear a device like this, helps them. And I'm convinced. One thing I'll say is I'm absolutely convinced that our kids, and certainly our grandkids, but maybe even our kids, will be shocked that we lived our lives the way we did before the pendant. That we just forgot 90% of what happens after a week, and we accepted it. We're like, hey, we're just going to forget everything. It's like living life with blurry vision. And we just accepted that that's just the best things could be. And that in a world in which we remember everything, I think we can be more present. We can follow through on our commitments, and we can live more purposeful lives.
Well put. I think of this as the prosthetic, and it's a prosthetic for your mind instead of just for your body.
Exactly.